I'm Jennifer Brussow, the Director of Data Science at Terakeet, and I'm here today to talk to you about the super small topic of AI and the search landscape and some implications and opportunities there. So at Terakeet, I'm actually part of a larger team on our engineering department. So it's not just me doing all of the data science work within our company, but I get great support from our data engineering, software development, technical project management, and product management departments as well. So just wanted to highlight that part of an ecosystem here, but today I'll be talking to you about data science topics in particular. So in this presentation, we'll cover kind of three main sections: the current state of generative AI and some market trends of where things are heading, the changing state of search with the search generative experience and RAG modeling, which we will explain, and then the proliferation of AI-generated content online and how that's impacting the search landscape more broadly. So quick glossary before we get into it. These are going to appear everywhere throughout this presentation. So SGE is Search Generative Experience. That's specifically Google's AI overviews that are appearing at the tops of searches. LLM, of course, means large language model. That's what's powering generative AI. There are lots of different flavors of those. And then RAG is Retrieval Augmented Generation, which we will go through later in these slides. So the current state of generative AI, let's talk about what we're seeing. My first point that I'd like to make is how much generative LLM's performance has improved. So one way we can understand this is a task called MMLU, which is a multiple choice test that covers 57 academic subjects. So what we do is actually the generative LLMs have to take this test. It's 100 items. And so the developers estimate that human experts, like people with PhDs, would score around 89.8, so 90% correct on this. What we see is in 2019, models it's pretty much near random performance, right? They're getting about 25% of the questions right. We might as well just be guessing at that point. But over the course from 2019 to 2024, what we've seen is our latest generation models are scoring in the mid 80s. So that's pretty much human expert level. On a side note, I went through and looked at some of the actual questions that are on the MMLU test. They are super hard. I think 90% could even be an overestimate. These are not joking, these questions. So we've really seen incredible performance gains in AI over the last few years. And honestly, I know people have been talking about, is there more training data? Will we continue to see this pattern extend? Even if we don't, even if we're reaching a near maximum on performance, AI is already near expert level, near human expert level. So we've attained a level of performance that has real implications for how we live and work. So the other side of that is, of course, market share, revenue, and adoption. Economic forecasters are predicting continuing growth. I also went out and looked for some less aggressive market researchers. Goldman Sachs was the most conservative one I could find. So even a conservative estimate is that 6% of GDP gains to 2030 would be attributable to AI, and that 25% of workplace tasks would be automated. So even in a lower adoption scenario, we're still going to see a lot of task automation and revenue driven by AI in its current state. So just want to set the stage of we've seen rapid increases in performance, and economically, we're forecasting additional rapid growth there as well. So let's talk about what this means for the internet and search. So let's get into SGE. So if we think about how search worked pre-generative AI, what happens? Step one, you've got some sort of user query. The search algorithm goes out and scans through its database of websites to find the ones that are most relevant to answering that query. That information is transmitted back to you, the user, in basically a list, right? A search engine results page. And then, great, now you've got this list of URLs and websites. Now it's time to use your human brain, right? You look at the things that are on the SERP to see, are these relevant? Is this information answering my question? What is it saying? Are these sources I trust? What are my takeaways? So what we've seen with SGE is that human analysis step is what's being automated out. So we've got an LLM that's getting that information and synthesizing it for you into an easily digestible summary. So there's not kind of the human evaluation step in SGE or any sort of AI-enabled search. So what does this mean? Right, it's a fundamentally different user experience. So you're going to see lower click-throughs. People have got their answers already just from looking at the search page. The actual websites are, of course, also pushed down on the screen, so people are much more likely to click through. It's also more and more important to land content into that summary to make sure that it is selected in that synthesis, and that's called generative engine optimization. So kind of a counterpart to search engine optimization. The search algorithm itself, that process of retrieving relevant content, that's even more important now, right? Because humans won't be evaluating the results on their own. It'll all be passed to the LLM kind of equal weight. And then finally, it looks much more like you're talking to another person on the other side, right? So it's different types of search terms that are gaining popularity as we see people leveraging technology like SGE. So in order to figure out how we can thrive within this system, we really need to understand what's happening under the hood. So this is where we're going to get into RAG modeling as promised earlier. So step one is finding the best sources to answer the query. You'll notice this corresponds to step one on our previous slide. So again, this is retrieval, the foundational problem of search engines. This is not generative AI. This is information retrieval. This has been like a problem for data scientists for decades at this point. So you're looking at relevance, authority, information quality, common SEO factors. The next step is augmentation. So that's taking that source information and then attaching it to some sort of a prompt. That prompt is going to be something pre-engineered by a data scientist or an AI engineer with instructions on here's the information, synthesize it, and provide some sort of a structured output. And so importantly here, it might not be the full text of each source. A typical approach here would be to kind of chunk information up. So it might just be snippets from websites rather than the entire website itself being provided. And then the final step is generation. So this is where it's actually LLM driven, right? We've got our prompt, we've got our supporting information that it's been augmented with. It's time to synthesize and generate that response. So you may or may not see citations be preserved at this stage. LLMs are stochastic processes under the hood. So it's a synthesis step that is from that LLM model. So taken all together, this is RAG modeling. And this process is used for Google SGE, for search engines like Perplexity, OpenAI's search-enabled models, which are using Bing under the hood. Anywhere that there is kind of retrieval of information and then synthesis into a result, this is what's going to be happening under the hood. So I showed this to my husband and he told me I needed an example, that it wasn't super clear. So here's a great example to walk through it. So what is a reciprocating SAW? This is, embarrassingly, I did not know what it was, but now I do. So step one, retrieval, you can see these are actual websites that are explaining what a reciprocating SAW is. So that's the actual website themselves. Augmented, this isn't a real prompt. We don't know what the real prompts are. Those are being authored by, teams at Google or OpenAI or Perplexity. But I just took a little stab at a kind of placeholder prompt. It's going to be something about you're an assistant, probably helping users interpret their search results. In reality, it would be very engineered. So those sources from the retrieval step are going to be inserted along with this prompt. And then we get to the generated response, which is that AI overview. And we can see that a reciprocating SAW is a small handheld power-driven tool that uses a reciprocating blade to cut through a variety of materials. It is not the same thing as a table saw, which I learned as the result of this search. So that's an example of RAG modeling in action. So the first step, this retrieval step, that's where brands really have control. And that's also where Terakeet can provide value, right? The augmentation, the generation, those things are in the hands of the search providers, but retrieval is something that we can impact. So we can place brand-friendly content that will be the best source to answer the query when users need it. And that's going to be relevant not just for search SERPs and RAG modeling, but anywhere that retrieval is important again. All right, so changing gears slightly to another phenomenon that's happening with AI online, uh, the proliferation of AI generated content. You have probably already seen it in your daily life. It is taking over social media networks. It's on Facebook, it's on LinkedIn, and it's on websites. There are tons of websites that are full of AI generated content. They're just less exciting to put on a slide, right? So, what does this mean? Well, one thing that's happening is that search algorithms are having to adjust to try and keep up. We do not have a good, reliable AI detection model. It doesn't exist. It has not been invented. Google can't tell whether something is AI content. No one can at this point in 2024. So, in order to keep up with that, we're seeing a couple effects. One is that algorithms are just breaking down. There's so much more content to index. There's so much out there. So it can lead to low quality results being prioritized. So that could be inaccurate answers or hallucinations. One example of this is kind of prior to a recent SGE rollback, there was a result telling people to eat rocks that popped up, and it cited Berkeley geologists. Of course, those Berkeley geologists aren't real and never said that. That's a pure just hallucination happening. Another thing we've seen is, again, because we can't detect AI generated content, but we know users want to see human created content. So where do we know we can get that? Forums. Sources like Reddit and Quora, we've seen those types of results be more and more prioritized in search algorithms. There's even a Reddit search feature that we've seen pop up in Google's results. So that's another tweak trying to filter out the AI content and prioritize human created content that would be more trustworthy. Unfortunately, this also has some side effects. People really enjoy being funny online. So for example, the kind of now internet famous example of Google telling people to use glue while making their pizza, that is a joke from a Reddit thread. So that's with Reddit content being prioritized, again, like things like joke material can get promoted as actual facts and end in results like that. So kind of an overarching theme here is that Google is at odds with itself, right? Google is a huge company. It's got different teams. On one side, we've got the search teams. They're trying to maintain the principles of their search, surface that high quality content. And we know that 75% of Google's revenue comes from ads on those SERPs. On the other side of the aisle, we've got Google's AI teams. There's kind of a generative AI arms race, and Google wants to stay on top of that. So they don't disclose this, they don't have to, but we know that there's at least 30 billion in traceable investments in AI that have gone out to date. So kind of Google being at odds with itself, we don't know how this is going to unfold, what's going to happen, but what is clear is that it's thrown some new elements of flux into the search landscape. So how will all of this impact consumer behavior? Well, we've seen some things start to arise already. So consumers are increasingly disenfranchised with social platforms. We're seeing people complain about the zombie internet and general distrust of algorithms. And as AI content continues to explode in volume, we're seeing consumers want to turn to authentic and human content that's attached to specific creators and brands. So making that explicitly human content, that's going to be a specific marketing strategy, much in the same way of like, think about organic food, right? Like food should be food, right? But organic food is more authentic, more real, and increasingly preferred by consumers. Similarly, actual human content is going to be a valued commodity as we see AI content kind of flood the market. So for brands, we really need to build brand trust, cultivate that audience, and then maintain reputation with that audience. And in the long term, one thing that people are saying may occur, and I personally do think we're starting to see this already, is the internet fracturing. So basically, low traffic, AI created pages, which may eventually overwhelm search just due to volume, and then curated human authored content that would be served through other channels like blogs or newsletters, Discord servers, social media. So this would have real implications for search. So right now we see search is king, basically. Over 90% of our online experiences are starting with search. And then within that, Google accounts for over 90% of the global search engine market share. So it's really search on top, and the rest of the internet is, other channels are less important. But if we see this fracturing, we'll probably see some channel migration as well. So search would still be relevant, right? It's not going anywhere. People will still have questions they need the answers to, but it might be less useful and no longer like the dominant factor for how people start their online journeys. So curated content, communities, this could be the channel migration we see as these other types of channels are more relevant for consumer decisions. So what does all this mean? Well, I can tell you at Terakeet, what we've been doing is focusing on using AI for insights and efficiencies, able to do more analysis on larger data sets, find efficiencies and speed up processes, rather than using it for brand identity. Thanks for your time today. Again, I'm Jennifer Brussow, and for more information about Terakeet and our offerings, please visit terakeet.com.